All right, everyone. Well, welcome to the spring meet and greet. I was about to say Medfield TV, not Medfield TV. That's where I work. MassAccess is where I volunteer, and welcome to MassAccess's spring meet and greet over at TCAM in Taunton. I'm Katie. As I mentioned, I'm the executive director at Medfield TV and the president of MassAccess. And thank you. And we are so happy to have you all here today. I have a few people to thank. First of all, Kim Murphy, the executive director here at TCAM, and her staff, Walter and Matt. So thank you all so much for hosting us today. Also, big thank you to our annual sponsors, Telview, and also Isaac, who could not be here today. Also, thank you to our vendors who are here today, JML Lighting, Comrex, Metasond, Oakers, and Castus. And then I also want to thank all of my board members, especially Karen Henderson, who is the chair of our events committee and has been doing so much to get these events rolling. So not only Karen, but also David Gauthier, who will be here soon, Jonathan Boshin, Matt Landry, and Liz Harkins. Did I forget anybody? No, that's okay, great. I also want to thank Rob Chapman. He recently stepped off the board. He was a huge help this year. And as you could hear, there's only 6 of us right now. So we have a little board. We are looking for some more people to step up and help out on the board. You don't have to commit to a full term right away. We do open up all of our committees for anyone in our membership to join. So if there's a certain committee that really sparks your interest, please let me know, and I'd be happy to let you join a committee and test the waters for a little while and see if MassAccess might be a good fit for you. Because after all, we're all leaders. We are all in this together. So the more hands, the better we will be, and the lighter the workload will be. So thank you all. So we have a jam-packed schedule today. We have 2 main presentations. One is going to be priceless but not free, providing your value to power your mission. And this is going to be led by Peter Fasciano of Franklin TV. And then also automation and accessibility and AI, what's new from Telview, and Florence and Daniel will be leading the charge there. So let's start. I just want to give Kim an opportunity to come up here and talk a little bit about her station and, maybe talk about some tours today as well. So come on up, Kim.
Thank you, Katie. Welcome, everyone, and I want to thank MassAccess for choosing us to be the hosts for this, and thank all the vendors that came. And I'm Kim Murphy. I'm the executive director here at TCAM. We have been an entity since 2006, so it's actually going to be our 20-year anniversary this year. And to tell you a little bit about what we do, we are public access for Taunton, but there is an educational channel at the Taunton High School, and then there's also a government channel at City Hall. We tape a lot of have residents that come in and tape their own shows, and we do a lot of community events, but we also work very closely with the city. So we will do tape a lot of city events. We tape the inauguration, and then we have a pretty big hand in all of the election coverage as well. So we do live election results. We have candidates come in and do the famous 5-minute speeches that I'm sure a lot of you do, and we do candidates debates in this space as well. One of the challenges we do have from time to time is that we do have a small staff. It's myself and then Walter Sabina, who is our production coordinator. So we kind of get around that a little bit by all of our wonderful volunteers and freelancers that help us out. We do pay a stipend to our freelancers, and then we have a lot of volunteers as well. Matt and Tino are both here today, 2 of our volunteers. So that kind of helps us get around that a little bit. And before I kind of sign off, I just wanted to give a little history of the building that we're in. So we moved here in 2011. There's this space, but then there's the space over there, which you'll see later. So the space over there actually was a gym when we moved in. So we were able to do a nice build out because it was just like a big, huge open space. And originally, I believe the building was like a curtain factory. So in 2011, we did a build out over on that side, and we have 2 small studios over there. And then in 2014, this space was actually a church, and they were leaving. So we asked the building manager about renting this side out. So we decided to make it like an auditorium, as you can see, so we could do live events in here. And the build out for this setup was about 13 months. So we actually had like poles like in the middle of the room when we moved in. So we had to do this big, huge study and have a steel beam built. You can see it up there, and then have it covered to support the building. So that alone took like 4 months. And then the set behind you was built by Erector Sets of Philadelphia, and it took them several months to build, and then they came in and did like a 6-day, full days install just to set this up. So it was an undertaking, but well worth it. We've used it for debates, we've used it for special events, and we also have our own game show in Taunton called Silver City Password. So we tape all the game show in here as well. So finally, I just wanted to say that we will be offering tours during lunch. So if you'd like to see the other side of the studio, you can, myself, Walter, and Matt will all be around to show you around. So if you'd like to see it, you can see it then. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Kim. All right, and now I'm going to ask Karen to come on up with me to the stage. We're going to take a little sit. Oh. All right, so now we come to our first panel presentation. So Peter is as I mentioned, the executive director of Franklin TV. Peter, would you like to give us a little intro about you and what you're going to be presenting today?
Sure. Basically, they're here to provide me with adult supervision, just
keep them in line,
so I don't go off the rails again. I basically grew up in the commercial production world and in the broadcast world. Spent many years building TV stations, Channel 7 being one of them, back when they moved from Kenmore to downtown Boston, so that kind of dates myself. And I had to, somewhere in the middle of my career, switch from managing all the technology to the creative side, to become a writer and director when I started my own production company. And obviously an interesting journey, and I ended up building up a production company with a staff of 50 in a 20,000 square foot building with 2 sound stages, about $3 million worth of equipment to run it all. And I was shooting as a director not only in Boston, but periodically in LA, New York, London, and wherever the jobs took me. So we were doing pretty big projects. Typically, a commercial could be $100,000 to $1 million to shoot for 30 seconds. So it's, very high-end stuff back in the day. And yes, the least expensive project I ever worked on was $2,500. Same 30-second venue. So it's quite a range, and to be able to manage all of that successfully, profitably, requires a lot of problem solving, and also understanding, what assets you do or don't have. Along with writing and directing, I also managed, along with my business partner, the costs, evaluating what we could charge for our services, and so on. And at that time, this is the late 70s, early 80s, the industry was coalescing, and I'm talking about the advertising and production industry, was coalescing around a standard form for actually evaluating and budgeting projects. For those of you who are not familiar, this is that form. It's available online from AICP, the Association of Independent Commercial Producers. And the AICP form, if you just go to AICP online, you can download the form for what it is. It won't tell you a whole lot, but people who understand how to fill it out know what the various steps are. The form consists of a deck page. That's what you're looking at here, also known in ad parlance as the top sheet. And the top sheet has all these subcategories that you then fill out for all the things that you're including in the commercial, your services, how many days, what you're editing, and so on. The AICP form is essentially a miniature version of what you have to do to budget an entire movie. 2 hours worth of work over 90, 120 days, plus all the editing and so on. So there are some industry norms at the very top end. And at least they're worth understanding. In the late 70s, when this was codified, the background, by the way, on this was the #1 advertiser in the world, Procter & Gamble, said, "We're tired of getting bids from companies and we have no idea what we're buying. We want to know what it is we're getting for our money. If we're spending $100,000 on a Colgate commercial, what happens?" Up until that time, it was a lot of wing of bat, eye of newt mystery. And so they worked with Procter & Gamble and through the ad agency group, the 4As, the American Advertising Agency Association, they got together with AICP to actually codify a standard form of bidding. So when you're working on projects, you actually submit the top sheet to the ad agency, and the ad agency then can compare bids, and it's no longer apples and oranges. Everything sort of becomes standardized. So that's what happened at the top end of the business. I started down the path of trying to understand how we could compete better, and I actually wrote computer code codifying the AICP top sheet and everything under it, and I automated the bidding process for my company. It took me about 18 months to do that, but it turned out to be an extremely valuable process. And the agencies actually appreciated it. So, as you all know, we live in a media world which is, very small and also very tall at the same time. Things can be anywhere. And so later on, I want to talk about where do we fit into this thing and how might we actually compete in the commercial world. But again, my #1 goal is, first and foremost, to help you understand what you're worth for all the intent underneath that particular term. How many people here actually calculate the free market value of all the services that they offer? And therein lies part of the mystery. How do you know what the free market will take? Well, here's a couple of quick examples. We recently completed in Franklin 2 graduations. We have 2 high schools. We have the Franklin High School, and we also have the Tri-County Vocational School, both great schools, and we cover both graduations. And sometimes we've collaborated with Rentham on them, and sometimes with North TV, et cetera. But at the end of the day, it's interesting also in that we provide the video coverage, we do the streaming, we have multiple cameras, all that. Both of the high schools, because of the fact that everything is outdoors, the high schools need really, really large PA systems, which we do not have. So they have to hire a public address company to come in, place some speakers on the field, lay out whatever microphones are necessary. Now, we're providing 3 cameras, switching, basically a TV control room on location, plus streaming, all of that for free. The public address company is charging somewhere between $8,000 to $12,000 for putting speakers on the field and one guy to keep it lit up during the event. That's a pretty big number. But it's not a crazy number. And I think that's the key. The free market forces that are out there, amortizing your gear, providing your crew, all of that stuff, and the markup that you need on it in order to survive and make a profit, means that the number is going to be pretty big for what you do. Now, I'm sure, if you've done your actualization, as you mentioned, you look at putting 3 cameras on the field with a crew and everything else, and you apply numbers to that, the number gets big, as it should. And I want you to be comfortable with that. You want the number to be big enough to be real, small enough to be competitive. Therein lies the mystery and the magic of pricing things. So I want to help you actually understand, how do you build that out? And so the first thing I want to do is give you a little snapshot of Franklin TV. This is literally 90 seconds on our PowerPoint, and we'll just click it off. This is what we look like on the web, our TV and radio station. This is what our advertising looks like with our volunteers. We shoot on location. This is the senior center, the school, obviously. This is our kitchen where we do cooking shows. We're running typically 1 or 2 series. This is our small studio. We're setting up TVs in there so they look like this under the lights and they're balanced. And we can have a million different looks in the room, which is really, really nice. And all the TVs swivel. We have a larger drive-in studio, which is similar to this size. And it now has 6 85-inch TV sets in it. We run a radio station as well, WFPR.FM. We have a community room that people can use in the evening to hold meetings. We invite other orgs to come in. And so quantifying, we're not a commercial enterprise. But when I do this presentation to our town councilors, to the school board, to anybody in our local government or anybody interested, I always ask the question, what if we weren't here? What would you have to pay? And so that gets us to a realistic discussion about,
good folks, just like
well, first of all, dispelling the notion that I have heard.
Thanks for watching.
With the legislation, there was, I forget his name, and it should be a forgettable name, on the North Shore, one legislator who said we're a relic. Yeah.
Is that Feingold?
Yes. And I'll forget his name again.
That's fine. You can forget it.
Yes. Yes. Okay. I'm forgetting his name. Okay. But because I only want relevant people in my life. And clearly, if he thinks we're a relic, he's not relevant. But that said, there are now a great and growing number of legislators, one by one, getting on board our mission and understanding that we add value. It's also interesting in the last year that we've passed an interesting threshold. There are more states now that have legislation to support us than not. We've gone past the halfway mark. So we're not asking Massachusetts to do something that's, outside the box, extraordinary, painful. This is something that should have an adult discussion to back it up and to be able to make our case. Now, like all of you, I'm certainly sure you all appreciate all the hard work that MassAccess has been doing. David Gauthier's been pushing the rock uphill, and it's a lot. And we've been at this now 3 or 4 years. And if we don't manage to get legislation to happen this year, what's our next act? And so part of this discussion this morning is to prepare for that exactly, our next act. We told them last year we're running out of money. And in the public hearing, there were a number of people who showed up with a very similar story. So what are we going to go back if there's another hearing and they want to revisit the issue? How do we freshen that up? And I know that I've had great success at the local level in my own zip code, talking to our town manager, talking to all the people. They know what we do with the money, and they know what value they're getting. And they're very appreciative, and they really work hard at collaborating with us. So that said, just to review quickly, who cares? You know, the municipality you serve, town council, selectmen, whoever, your school committee, of course, the Massachusetts reps, senators, Congress members, you know, Markey et al. And of course, here's another one, your own board of directors. Think about kind of a conversation you could have with your own board about how well you're actually doing in the studio, how well you're actually doing, what kind of value you're generating for your community. Your board wants to know that. And in the process of having that discussion, they come to appreciate you all the more because they know you've got your finger on the pulse. So this is a great story to have in-house with all the people that you work with. This is a quick snapshot of one of the spreadsheets that we did in our last presentation to the town. Along with that, I included this. This is standard inflation. We started in 2012, and standard inflation in that time has gone up around 45% to 2026. And so that says this is what the world knows. And of course, inflation is still galloping along. Now, between 2012 and 2017-ish, Comcast and Verizon both raised their rates considerably. And so if you had cable service in the first part of that decade, you found yourself paying even more money for it. Well, I think that ended up shooting them in the foot, because if they were going faster than the rate of inflation, people were starting to say, yeah, it's getting awfully pricey. And this is what happened to our budget. So where we are now, we were doing $600,000 a year when I first started at Franklin TV. Now we're down around 540 and still dropping. And my great fear, of course, is that that drop may actually be accelerating rather than decelerating. I was hoping that we might find an asymptote somewhere where things leveled out, but not seeing that happen right now. So there's still a lot of reason to be concerned. So that's it on the slides. And what I want to do, who had the opportunity, Katie put a link out yesterday on the reflector for the, not only the PowerPoint, but for the Excel sheets that I prepared to talk to my group. Anybody get to download? That's great, okay. So I do encourage you to get on the reflector, find the link. I can post the link when I get back again. And the Excel that I use is intended to be a case building tool. And so what I'm going to do now is get out of this. We'll go to Excel, and I'm going to click along here at a pretty good clip. And I also want to open it up to Q&A. So first thing I'm going to do is go to line cards. When I first started looking at rate sources, one of the things that I found is that the mystery has kind of returned. That is, what I told you about the AICP and standardizing bids, where an educated buyer wants to be able to talk to an honest and educated seller, and everybody have the same language and the same tools of bidding craft. And in the modern media world, outside of advertising, that seems not to exist anymore. There are video production companies, who, well, it's part of it is creative motivation, part of it is what the traffic will bear, part of it is how experienced the buyer might be in terms of evaluating and buying video services. Many of them are naive, some of them have experience at the corporate level, but there's a lot of variability now on both sides. So when I was out looking at, okay, how can I start to break my services down into something that's kind of standardized? Something that was much more common in the industry when teleproduction was much the operative word through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Everybody had what was known as a line card. The line card was a literal breakdown of all your services. Well, I needed one of these, I need one of those in red, check that off, and I can put together a project. The line card has sort of faded away over time, where what the production companies now offer is, we can do that job for X dollars. What do you think? And they start selling the creative, and all of that's fine. It's a way of doing business. There's nothing dishonest about it. It's just, it leaves a lot of mystery in the accounting of things. And so what I did is, on the left column, what you see is me sort of breaking down what we do. Okay, we need cameras, 1, 2, or 3 of them. We need live switching and control on location. Maybe there's a narrator. We have a large, small studio, and so on. So I started just, what can I do to describe what we do in some kind of modular form? And these numbers, as you can see from various places that I looked at the time, they're all over the place. I tried to reverse account the bids that people had put out for projects or what they were saying on the internet about what they offer. And in trying to do the reverse accounting, the forensic accounting on that, I really couldn't get a great conclusion. And so this is just sort of illustrative of the fact that there's no great way to learn a lot on the internet with any great accuracy. There are some articles about how to charge, and that's all good, but they're fairly generic. In the next sheet, what I did is I started tallying up all the programs that we do. And of course, that's where you discover that, well, there are quite a few. We're a pretty busy house. And I do that sort of channel by channel. Yeah, we do run the 3 channels. And once again, I return to the line card mentality, where I really do a much finer job of breaking down what it is that we offer. And now I want to talk about markups. Here's a snapshot of labor. Could be pre-production and development. We do a lot of pre-pro, actually helping people figure out what their programs are like, working on the graphics with them, helping them to understand how they can do this episodically, week in and week out, and how they can crank out a whole series rather than just a program. We do location scouts, testing, prep. Then, of course, there are talents. These are all people. And here are internal staff numbers as to what the people might be paid as placeholders. It translates into hourly rates, hours a week, weeks per year, so on. Then there's, what's the burden cost on the staff? Do they have health insurance? What benefits do they have that have to be factored in? And that gets me to these numbers and comparing them to the freelance market. Now, an interesting thing about the freelance market, and this is sort of a pretty good guide, the freelance market, freelancers don't work 240 days a year. They spend a lot of time marketing themselves, a lot of downtime, travel time, call it whatever you will, spend a day sending out their invoices to whoever they worked with. So the typical freelancer tends to work about 100 days a year, actual paid days, of the 240. It's about 40% of the whole workable year. Now, the reverse of that is And this is something that I had a lengthy discussion with the 4As about. Hill Holiday Advertising, Humphrey Advertising, all of the major players in Boston. We sat down and talked about charging for creative services. And the way the ad agencies do it, quite logically, is tied to what I talked about in terms of in-house staff or freelancers. They take the burden cost of the staffer, whether it's an art director, a writer, broadcast producer, but someone who's actually working on a commercial project. They take what the burden cost is hourly, and they mark it up 3x. The 3x markup is simple. To get the money back on the person, a 2.4x markup is typical. That is, it's the corollary, it's the reverse of the 40%. You can get your money back on the person and break even if you, in fact, charge 2.4x the person's cost. But remember that you also have a building, electricity, a desk, a computer, the internet, and all the things that make that person productive. And so the support system under the person, the building, billing for their time, all of that stuff gets the company to a 3x markup, typically, on creative help. So that's a great guideline to know. And you can apply that guideline to your own staff. So that's what you see here. And what that does on the markup is it says that for these people, if they worked all year long, this is how much money I actually made or brought in to contribute to G&A for their presence in the building. So that at least gives you a sense of, okay, should I hire more people? Do I have too many people? And you begin to understand how to better manage your staff when you can cast these numbers into how it is that you work. So getting to the line card element, there are three things that I want to be able to incorporate. I want to incorporate whatever labors are necessary to support the task. I want to be able to support whatever capital equipment is necessary to perform the task. And in cases where something is happening in the building, studio rental, I want to be able to incorporate the capital costs of the building being amortized according to IRS rates into the task. So there are three things that I want to bring together. Thing one, the staff. Thing two, equipment. Thing three, how the building is involved. And so all of that is factored into all of these breakdowns. So here we have camera equipment for one person, another layer of camera equipment, a third layer of camera equipment, professional complete package, etc. These are the rates at which this stuff would actually be rented out at. Then I add in labor. The labor that you see here is actually marked up 3x from the top sheet that you saw. And that is also incorporated in here. The labor is in the green square. The yellow square constitutes the entirety, both the labor and the equipment. And you see how people are involved here. We have a fly pack system that we use on location. We don't actually have a van or truck. The fly pack is literally a sub 50-pound box. It has the video switcher, the audio system, 2 computers, dropout cables, snakes, all the power, all the internet connectivity, Ethernet support, everything is all in the box. And when you open the box, it flops open into a 4-foot footprint on a table, and you can originate live camera stuff. Streaming, all of it's in the box. The box is extremely lightweight. It's made out of coroplast, the stuff you see in the post office that everybody sorts their mails into. The boxes are indestructible and they weigh nothing. And so we create these custom boxes. We line them with foam. We put all the gear in them, all pre-wired. So we crack open the box. We light it up, drop cables, 5 minutes later we're making a movie. So it's extremely efficient. We have a senior and a junior version of these devices. So we have a senior fly pack system. They're intercom and public address support. We do have some small PA systems. Junior fly pack system, which is a simpler build. And then there's the building. Our building cost around $300 a square foot when it was built, typically for a finished level. The IRS guidelines, you amortize your building per IRS guidelines over 39 years. Equipment. Now, equipment amortization gets interesting. So I'm using right now a 5-year model because that's what the IRS is using. So I'm trying to stick to some kind of a standard here, which begs the question, okay, if you're amortizing equipment in 5 years, how much utility will that equipment provide within that window of time? Now we know, for instance, that our on-air server, that goes in the rack, and you want that bad boy to run as long as possible. Other things like file storage, a lot of the infrastructure, a lot of the terminal equipment, when it's installed, you want it to just run and run and run with minimum maintenance. Then there are cameras. Cameras go outdoors all the time. Cameras have to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous weather. And it's a case of, realistically, how should I amortize things like cameras and other outdoor equipment that are subject to transportation and other uses that are kind of hard on the systems. So traveling gear, I tend to look at amortizing a little faster than stuff that's built in, like in the studio. Just as a general guide, also in I'm going to say early in the Clinton administration, they started something which was with the IRS called ACRS, Advanced Cost Recovery for capital equipment, with the idea that you could take certain pieces of capital equipment and amortize them in 3 years. So even though I'm looking at 5 years here, 3 years and media equipment falls into that category. And part of the reason for it is obsolescence. The industry was really going through a lot of changes at that time, and if you didn't have the latest and greatest thing as a commercial production company, you were behind the curve. So we could find ourselves having to constantly replace equipment that was actually still working just fine, but the clients were looking for the latest and greatest. And of course, the competitor down the street is advertising, hey, we just got one, come use ours. So the competition sort of forces you to keep moving forward and to phase out older equipment, perhaps sooner than later. Consider the digital revolution when everything suddenly was being done on a personal computer. And I'm sitting there with $3 million worth of analog editing equipment. Yikes. And along comes Avid. That was a sea change. So we were actually looking at, in my commercial company, we were looking at amortizing gear in 18 months. That is, we had a goal, get the thing paid for in 18 months. Running it longer than that was considered profit, with the goal that we would try to see a 5x return on a piece of equipment, a camera, an editing system, whatever it was. If it had electricity in it and it was involved in media, we had a plan for amortizing it, trying to get to 5x within a 3-year window, faster if we could. The numbers that we worked with at the time, by the way, were we wanted a paint system. Today it's Photoshop and a number of other free offerings on the internet. A standard definition paint system in the early 80s was $250,000 just for the box. And then you had to put it in a room, you had to plan it all out, you had to put support gear into it. The device that could actually do print work at a much higher resolution was $400,000. Cameras were typically 40 grand a pop to 50 grand a pop. Videotape systems were typically around 80 grand a pop, and then going to cassette later on, about half that. So we were working with pretty big numbers in our company, and amortization and understanding how we scheduled the gear and what we could afford to buy. It was really mission critical to our survival. So today, I'm sure many of you are working with cameras in the field, like, you know, the Sony NX5 is a great example. They've been around forever. You know, it's a roughly $4,000 camera. Next one up's around $6,000. Very affordable, works great, 30 by lens, you know, great for sports. It kind of fits what we do. So gear that helps our mission is available, is obviously affordable, but it still means that we have to have an amortization plan for these things. So what I do is I have this depreciation number here that you can see on the screen. And the depreciation number actually lists the number of uses that I plan to apply to that device over the, call it 3 to 5 year window. How many times will that camera go out the door? How many hours will I be editing something? I consider a day of editing to be a use. And by the way, you'd think that, well, yeah, I have a camera, it'll go out 200 times easy. But what if you have 12? Because we do have a fleet of cameras that we apply 1, 2, 3, 4 of them to various projects. So they all have to kind of fit that model. They're all going to contribute to that. So if it's 12 cameras that we're running over 5 years, you know, suddenly we're talking about 2,400 uses over 5 years. So that's, you see how the scope changes. And so you've got to take a look at all of these things and find a way to get the numbers to at least come close to fitting. So, you know, to be fair, there is something of, you know, wing of bat and eye of newt in making the estimates. And that's the obscure art of both marketing and managing your assets and so forth. And you're finding a way to blend what I will call, you know, your best hopes and worst fears with respect to profitability, with good use of the equipment, and how it is that you can maximize the services to your community. But if you download this sheet, understand that this is what I hope is a really solid starting point for all of you, with the idea that, oh, I see how he did that, and now I can make it mine. Now, we own our building, so yeah, we're amortizing the building over however many years. In a case where you're paying rent, you have a lease, well, you could take your lease numbers over the same number of years. Your lease is the thing that you're amortizing, and you know what that is monthly, and so there's a way to convert the approach I took to fit your own needs. And what I really, really want to do, hopefully, is so you can learn a little bit from, number one, what were my concerns, what's my history, what was my methodology to get here, and that you can then find a way to take my spreadsheet, you know, me spreadsheet, soup spreadsheet. you can find a way to make it your own. And you know, I'm happy to help. We can email back and forth if you have questions. So you can always contact me at Franklin TV, just Falciano at Franklin TV, and I'll try to answer your questions. And I also want to get into Q&A here as well. So here again, just to recap briefly, we're looking for 5x return on the equipment because you spent money to buy the equipment right at the outset. And now what you want to do, that's discounted cash. So when you take that and you stretch it over 5 years, you know, if you could have paid for the equipment at the end of it, the equipment would have cost less. Or if you could have paid for the equipment perhaps on a time plan, but if you're paying for it all up front, which we do, you need to know that the dollars that you're getting in year 5 are not worth the dollars that you put into the equipment in the beginning. So that's also part of the reason why you need a larger markup, along with just having the equipment contribute to the profitability of your operation. If you were, again, always a reminder, the mindset that you need as we talk about this, please, is you're in the commercial production business. You're not running a peg studio anymore. You are out fighting for your life every day. You are desperately looking for clients. You are desperately competing for business against a whole lot of other people. And so now you need to figure out, how much can I charge? How little can I charge? And at the same time, you always need to be mindful of that need for a near-term and long-term profit, a margin, to contribute to your G&A, contribute to your sales force. Yes, you will have one. Contribute to your marketing. Yes, you must do that too. So there's a lot of expenses. And again, talking about the expense side, in the manufacturing world, which I have a lot of experience with from my days at Avid, when we put a system together, what we have the cost of goods, COGS, the cost of goods sold, which is the computer and everything that puts together the system back in the time. Then there's another thing called burden cost, burden COGS. The burden COGS means that the device we sold you is ISO 2001 compliant. It has all the documentation and paperwork, the user manual, all the things that are peripheral to the client's successful use of that stuff. And so that gets you up to around 35% of the street price. Then there is, on top of that, 15% value-added reseller. The guys who make our stuff worth even more, thank you. And the value-added reseller provides you with field support, provides you with a relationship with your product and all that. And then the other 50%, that's where your marketing, your internal sales, your own sales staff that deals with the VARs. And then finally, you've got, if you're lucky, somewhere another 8 to 15% on top, which we'll finally get to call profit. So that's a breakdown in the manufacturing world. This is, obviously, we're having something of a mini MBA discussion here, which is actually good. So after our discussion today, I hereby decree that you all have micro MBAs, whether you do or not. But the idea of this business sensitivity is something that I just really want to encourage. In the service side, when we were a production company, and I compared this with other production companies in the commercial sector, our internal costs, all of it, everything that we did, typically had somewhere, depending on the client, a 35 to 50% markup on top. So if my internal costs, which kind of resembled manufacturing around 35%, and when I mark it up again, it starts to look again like that, what we talked about before, that 2.4x markup for laborers and so on. Another company that I worked with well, a company called Envision, they had classically a 50 to 60% markup on all their internal costs. And they were very profitable and did very well. So when you take all of these, call them tools for guidance, when you take all of these things and sort of stick them in your head and go, well, all right, I know these things to be true, or this is what's going on in the industry, this is the way that will guide you to get to the number that you need to understand what you do. Now, here's where the story gets. This is the good part. like I said before, we are floating somewhere in the mid-fives right now for our income. This is what we generated the last year in terms of community value. You can see our access, school, and government channels. On the access channel, the value to citizens who walked in off the street to make programs was more than $600,000, more than what we take in. And then there's the school channel. We did, for school sports, music events, and so on, $369,000 and change. That benefits the school directly. The government channel, $589,000 worth of meetings. Now that seems like a lot. We run 2 control rooms in our town hall, and they're both active. Sometimes we have parallel meetings going on. So the town really takes advantage of our service on the government side, and we fully support it. In my mind, the town government and the school are client number 1, client number 2. That's how I look at them. When you consider them to be a client, your attitude toward them suddenly changes for the better. How can I help you today? Hi, my name is Pete. If you want, I can change it. So that's really, really important. And that's why, by the way, we have this killer relationship with the town. We wanted to start our FM station, and the first thing they said to me was, where do you want to put your tower? I said, what do you mean? Well, you got to put a tower up somewhere. We'll help. We'll give you the land. Really? So that's the kind of tight relationship that you can inculcate working with your town through what is this commercial understanding of your valuation, and that you can look at them as clients. It all gets good, believe me. Our IT guys can't do enough for us on the town side. They're always there for us. The town administrator made sure we had a home for our FM station. We, in turn, put police, fire, and DPW on our tower for the town, and we support that. So this is synergy. You're always looking for synergy with your town, and I strongly, strongly encourage that, because they're the ones who are going to go to bat for you in the end. And the closer you are to them, to DPW, to the building inspector, to everybody in everybody's department, how can I help you at the department level? You know, what's conservation doing? Oh, let's go out and shoot something about that. They all become personal stakeholders, and they want to help you. So yeah, we do a lot for the government side, and happy to do it. Then we have these meetings. You saw our community room, which we have people come in the evening. So we're actually open from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day. And in the evening, we'll have 20, 30 people come by, and they will have their own nonprofit charity meeting in the room. We support it with Zoom, the equipment, coffee, all that stuff. And it's a comfortable home for people who don't have a home. Then there's radio. We generated almost $250,000 of community value in radio. That's been a real godsend for us, having an LPFM station. It was a game changer for us because it put us in people's dashboards. That's a powerful place to be. We're not limited to the wire of cable in their living room. And so our presence literally doubled in the town. And we produce a lot of government programs on the radio side as well. We interview the town manager monthly. We interview department heads monthly. We have discussions quarterbacking what happened at the town council meeting last night. And so all the stuff that's going on radio gives the town this sort of omnipresence as to what's actually going on in the municipal building. And that's great. And then we're starting a new initiative this year. I've been burn testing and working on reliability for digital signage. Consider that, you know, regardless of whatever the playback system you're using is, what happens between the shows? You got a billboard, right? And you program the billboard with whatever's going on, or next program coming up, or whatever. But there's some programming involved in terms of maintaining your digital billboard between programs. To which I said, well, can we integrate that with generalized digital signage? Can we take all that stuff and move it out into the town? Have a digital sign in the town hall entryway, digital signage at the school, digital signage at the police station, the fire station, the library. Put all these digital sign systems in that we control. Just like the FM station, this gives us another walk-by presence in all of the highly trafficked areas in town. So we're just starting to roll this out right now. We've been testing it. I've actually had a digital sign sitting in the town manager's office for the last 6 months. And I just said, Jamie, whatever comes across your head, give me a holler, let me know what you want to change. And so I'm giving the town this sort of first-person experience with digital signage, and we can support it for them, for our own self-interest. So this is another interesting initiative. And by the way, it's not expensive to do. You can get the best-in-class players for a few $100, 400, 500 bucks a pop. And you can talk to these players over the internet, and we all know what digital displays cost these days. You know, you can buy them in bulk at Best Buy. And so the capital expenditure to do this is not big, and we're looking forward to that giving us a really nice presence, you know, where it matters again. And it's the same workload, by the way, that we're doing already for our channels. We're just going to modify it and bring a few more stakeholders into it. So we're kind of excited about that. But to be able to tell your story just for the PEG operation, to say that, yeah, we've done, you know, a total of these many programs, 446 events through the year, and that was worth almost $1.6 million at free market rates. Well, that's a good story to tell. And how do you think that just, you say that to a legislator and you say, I brought in $550,000, that's what the cable companies paid me. I produced $1.6 million worth of value on our cable channels and on YouTube. And oh, by the way, I also generated another $250,000 on radio and elsewhere. So that's what we did. So now, what do you think about that? Supporting. Who's going to do that when we're not around? Deliberate long pause. And let them figure out that they don't have an answer. So I want to open it up now to Q&A.
We'll walk around with the microphone.
John Bosch, I'm a MassAccess member, but I'm asking on behalf of the station I manage, FCAT. So one of my favorite projects to do is managing the bulletin board. And I'm a little curious, when you have like the screen set up where you said, do you broadcast that out on your channels, or do you have a different way of getting it out, like a 24-hour channel devoted to your bulletin board?
Well, the bulletin board is the thing that runs in between our shows.
Right.
We don't tend to be really rigid about how long a show runs. If we're doing an interview show, it runs 45 minutes, let's say. And I encourage people when they do their programs, you know, you talk. When you're done talking, you stop. But just be in the moment, be in the story, tell your story fully, and we'll make the show and all that. It'll be wonderful. So there's some variability in the length of shows we do. And so we, you know, put up our own channel bulletin board between shows. Like so many people do. It's, you know, automatic, of course. And so because we're doing work to support that, there's no reason why we can't integrate that with a digital signage system that runs all over town.
Get that out. What do you use for the digital signage system, just out of
We're
curiosity?
working with OptiSigns.
Okay.
The interface is online. What OptiSigns provides is basically a free interface support. You subscribe to it per device. So if I'm running 10 devices, you're paying a subscription for 10 devices that you bought, by the way. But what they do is they provide the net address translation service. So basically you say, I want to talk to Town Hall. It knows where that device is. It connects you to the interface directly to that device. The other thing that they do is they do all of the file transfers. You say, I need to move this to that device. They get it there. All of these updates can be done immediately. They can be done in the middle of the night automatically, whatever you want. But you can update a device literally on the fly anytime. They also allow you to see the devices operating in real time. That's important to me. Okay, is there a dead screen in town hall, or is this really doing what it's supposed to do? So the devices are ultra reliable. We burned them for 6 months with 0 fails. So we have high confidence in them. And we know they're working because when we tap into them, we see them running back to us in real time, actually streaming. So it's a nice, tight, closed management loop, and we feel that, you know, paying the subscription to OptiSigns is worth the money. And somebody calls us from town hall and says, oh, we got a thing coming up in 2 weeks. Can you do a lower third crawl? Yeah, no problem. Bang, bang, bang. Which device do you want it on? You know, some, all, just that one. And we can just radiate it out, and it happens.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Yeah.
As you talk about transitioning to, I don't remember exactly how you worded it, but you know, really seeing yourself as a commercial entity. I just had my CPA in last month to present our fiscal review findings, and we took the opportunity to talk a lot about unrelated business income, taxes, maintaining your nonprofit status. What can you tell me about how you handle the overall tax question as we shift our approach into this more commercial perspective?
It's an interesting one. If you're serious about wanting to actually sell your services, there are a number of things to be aware of. Number one, and I'll talk about 2 things here. I am going to answer your question. Number one, you're accepting the fact that you're serving 2 masters. You have your PEG activities, which have to happen, and now you're bringing in a commercial person, someone who expects you to be there for them, to answer their questions, to do the pre-pro, to provide all the services that any other commercial entity would provide. And they're going to be taskmasters. They're going to have questions on the fly. They're going to make demands. They're going to make changes. And so you just need to be ready to deal with that added load. And that added load needs to find a way to fit into your regular operation. And that's another good reason, by the way, where you need to be really cognizant of your margins on accepting commercial work. So I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. That's the last thing I'm saying. It's a viable thing to consider in terms of income augmentation, but you really need to be prepared to do it right and make sure that your clients are jumping up and down happy with every project that they do with you, so that way you can develop a reputation as a great production source. On the taxes issue, that's an interesting one. In 1987, the Massachusetts Department of Revenue made a change in the tax law. Media services are taxable. So, and I want to define that a little bit. Media services that you provide to the end product are taxable. You need to collect the tax and you need to send it to the state. If you are doing something on spec, say developing a set of storyboards, or doing something that is not incorporated into the final product, that is not taxed, even though you may charge the service for it, because it's speculative in nature and not considered to be finished goods. We're always talking about finished goods with respect to what gets taxed. When you are working with an ad agency, the ad agency is responsible for the tax, not you, most of the time. I want to talk about the agency word. An ad agency, legally, to be an ad agency, is to represent the interests of their client, the car dealership, the whatever it is, the hospital. So the ad agency has a client. That's test 1. Test 2 is the ad agency has a written contract with the client. The written contract allows the ad agency to make decisions that are binding on that client. That's a key, because that is the nature and definition of the word agency. They act as agents, true agents. There's a legal term, called true agency. They have true agency, which means that one way or another, whether the client likes what they did or not, the work's going to get paid for, and they own the problem. So working with true agency, ad agencies, means you don't have to worry about the tax, because you're going to pass your cost to them, you're going to send them their invoice, they're going to put their 17.65% markup on your invoice, and they're going to pay the tax as well on what you did and their markup. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky. Some ad agencies use the term markup, which means that they owe the tax on the whole thing. Some ad agencies use the term agency fee on their invoice. Agency fee says that it may or may not necessarily be a markup. They're just charging this additional fee besides what you decided to bill them. And if it's an agency fee, they don't have to pay the tax on what is ostensibly the markup. Is that making any sense? All right, I know I'm sort of parsing here, but this is what we actually learned working with DOR on this. What does it mean? There were 65 production companies in Boston at the time. We were the largest. The Department of Revenue sent out inspectors to look at everybody's books. They came to visit us. Coffee, tea, what would you like? I handed them this big fat book of everything that we had done for the last 3 years. Every invoice was in there. Every taxable event was in there. The senior inspector looked at the junior inspector and said, "It's not like this. It's never like this." They go to the next production company down the street. Now, we had done our homework, clearly, to comply with the law. They go to the next production company down the street, and it's absolute chaos. Digging up all the invoices out of accounting. You know, it's adversarial, all that. Bad business. When the Department of Revenue was done over the course of 6 months, there were only 35 production companies in business. Many of them got bankrupted because they were liable for at least 3 years of back tax. They couldn't handle it, and they weren't prepared for it, and they ignored it. So shame on them for not doing their homework. But we were prepared. For us, it was 2 hours with an examiner and a pleasant conversation. Have a great day. And the other interesting thing is this. The ad agencies didn't care. Our clients didn't care that we had a sales tax on top. Why? They're marking it up 17.65%. So, because the sales tax was actually embedded in the projects that we build them, they said, well, they already took care of the problem. We'll just mark that up too. Life is good everywhere. It's kind of surprising what your clients will accept when you let them know what's actually going on. I mentioned earlier that I had computerized the AICP bidding form. When I turned that software on for the first time, we magically found $10,000 a month that we were failing to bill for. Because now it's all coming out of the computer. Stuff that in my mind I had overlooked to put on the invoice, whatever. But the bottom line was, there was a whole lot of stuff that we could be charging for. So suddenly our invoices go up. And the ad agencies contact me and say, we love your invoices, because they break it all down. We're showing our clients what they're buying. Our clients have no argument with all the stuff, plus the markup, plus everything else. The ad agencies actually considered it to be valuable to them. And so the broadcast producers and I would talk about it, and they say, yeah, it's all great. There's no mystery here, so we don't have to explain nothing. So these business forces get really kind of strange in a good way sometimes when you have a lot of information at your fingertips. Other questions?
Can I just jump in real quick? We're talking about the benefits of being able to put a price on what services you offer, and that being a good thing both for
Yep.
doing private production and for answering to your board or boards in town, town manager, town council, city council, but as to what's the worth of what you're doing and what's the value. And I'm just curious about how many people have actually created some kind of a spreadsheet like Peter's or some kind of a spreadsheet that does put a value to what you're doing. Have a lot of people done that? So like
It's difficult to
few?
do, I know.
It's
And-
difficult to do, right? I mean, I have one, but I felt like there's some amount of trying to get that, that number that, like
Wing
you
of
said.
bat, eye of newt.
Yeah, that one, that whatever that expression is, that. But I do think that's kind of it's a difficult task, we know, and Peter's given us a really good guideline here, but I wonder if it might be helpful if people end up being comfortable sharing that, maybe we could share some of those on the forum so people could take the one that maybe fits for your center. And again, depending on what you're using it for, if you're going out there and you're trying to pitch your services to do something that's for profit, that might look slightly different than what you're doing to, show your town manager or select board or whoever what that value is. But I'm feeling like, if there's 5 or 10 different stations that have centers that have done that, it might be helpful for people to share. Obviously, Peter's put his up there, and it's super complete. I mean, there's a lot to his, but I think I would find that helpful, and I wonder if afterwards we might share some of that information.
Yeah, and just to add to that, my question earlier was going to be if you have calculations for figuring out how much you should rent your equipment for or rent your spaces for, because you explained, how you get the hourly, daily, and half-day costs for employees and, making sure you include overhead and health insurance, things like that. But you don't have to go through all of it, but if you have it in that spreadsheet for your equipment and locations as well, that would be great to know.
There's an item going back to my resources sheet. Again, this is uses, what I'm talking about here. I'm planning that these are the number of uses I plan to apply to the thing over that window of time. What will reality be? Nobody can predict what's going on. We're talking about the mists of the future. But that said, I think, all right, given the number of things I'm currently doing with shows in studios, the number of events I'm covering, is this a fair number of uses within that window of time? Now, as the uses go up, as you will see in this particular formula, if the uses go up, sorry, get back over there. Come on. I can't change it, and I don't know why. Because it's not locked. Oh, I know why. There we go. If I just take any one of these, notice that the end number went down, which makes sense because I'm distributing the costs over more events. So the thing about this spreadsheet you will find is that starting off with the most basic assumption about resources, everything that radiates out of that is a formula. And so the formula is designed to compensate for, okay, we're changing this variable, and that radiates back. It does what spreadsheets do really, really well. So you can do a lot of what if with this sheet. And that was what I intended. So I don't put in fixed numbers except only in the places where I have to. Now, there's another thing on the bottom here. It tells me I'm spending around $4,000 for everything I do in the studio. I'm spending $2,400 for the school. I'm spending around $4,000 for the government channel because I have a very ornate production system for the town. But the school is lower. Why? No studio involved almost all the time, and all the equipment's on the road. So the demands of doing school events in terms of capital equipment It's not quite so severe as the demands elsewhere. So you see that reflected here. This is an indicator to me of, well, all right, can I figure out what I can do to lower the costs of what I'm doing on the access side? Can I figure out so you get a little bit of information back in going through this exercise where, some pleasant and maybe not so pleasant surprises might pop up. But the idea is I tried to make this as interactive as I could. And again, however you have spreadsheets currently, there are parts or all of this that you could adopt, make your own, figure out how you can come up with an amalgam that works for your organization. And there's one last thing that I'm working on with this sheet is better history of what we do with programs. I'm linking the actual program events back to the resources. So if I change a series, remove a series, add a series that I'm shooting, that's suddenly going to ripple through all my numbers automatically. So what I'm finally at a point where I've got this sheet designed so I can literally update it every couple of months with new programming that comes or old programming that goes, and it'll give me sort of a living tally as to exactly what's going on in our organization.
Hi, Pete.
Hey, Mike.
Great conversation. I'm thinking 10 years ago, I would have a double spreadsheet thing on our annual report that kind of outlines the value to the community. And to be honest, I feel like I've shied away from that in more recent years, thinking that it doesn't seem to hit with the town, doesn't seem to hit even when we go through license renewal. I think it's received as a fuzzy number.
Yeah.
Despite, I certainly didn't go to the extent that you've gone. It's a justifiable number and all of those things, but sort of like the newspapers when they put the paywall up, when you're gone, they're not going to replace it with the level of production that we're doing. I had 10 cameras at my graduation.
There's going to be some suffering involved when you're gone.
The cynical part of me says, if we're not around, sports coverage is going to be the AI camera that's already mounted on the press box, and they're going to fire it up without any student announcers, without any students learning how to do sports production with slow-mo replay and graphics and all of the things that we were originally here to do was to teach the community. So there's a cynical part of me that says, yes, that's a real number, but if we're not here, even at the government meeting level, there's technology now. I'll throw an owl up, and it's great that you have 6 cameras at our government meeting, and you're handling our Zoom thing. We provide 3 owls to the government besides our 2 control rooms. Yeah. So I guess that's always been my struggle, and you've renewed my interest in trying to develop that number and justify it. I think, Mike, one of the key points is you said you do an annual report for the town. And that's a key point. The town does an annual report for the entire community. It's quite the book that they produce. They take whatever we give them every year and they include it. Even though we're not a town department, they're happy to include us as though we were. Yep, same for us. And because of that intimate relationship, they really kind of treat us like a department. Yep. We're happy to do that. We're happy to be considered that way. And so when we show up in the town report, that's a great place to be for anybody who cares to read it. And they put together quite a few of these books and publish them. Yep. So I would encourage you to consider how not only could you have a report to the town, and I do a presentation to town council once a year, not a bad idea to see what the town is doing to the public. Right. And whether or not you might be able to participate with them in that space. Yep. And I just had a comment about the contract productions. We have developed a great relationship with a local college. They've hired us to do their graduation. I think it's now 7 years running, so we haven't screwed it up enough to lose the relationship. They actually really appreciate what we do. And they'll also call us if they have special events on campus. They have some dignitaries coming in and there's a panel discussion. And that's a great place to be. And the reality is, while they may even have the resources in-house, they don't do it on a regular basis and don't have the confidence to pull it off successfully when there are lots of eyes watching. And it's easy to fire us, I suppose, if something goes wrong. And so we've had that great relationship. But what's always it's a balancing act for us, because we're always afraid, particularly in graduation season, which happens to be also a very busy time for us, in Foxborough.
Yep.
I just hope it doesn't land on a date that conflicts, because we can't handle
Suddenly you're
three productions
oversubscribed,
going on
yeah.
at the same time that require our truck and 610 cameras.
Yep.
So the contract services sounds great at first until you have to work out all those logistics and balancing acts, because you certainly don't want to come across as pivoting so much towards the contract services that you're sacrificing what you're doing in your core mission, with your community. And so I just want to mention that we've found it to be a balancing act.
Yes.
To try to make it work.
Right, so just to survey, it's another question, like how many people are doing contracted services right now? So like we're way up high. All right, so, that's a good number. We've got something like 19, I think I counted, different centers represented today. I think it might even be a little short. I think I told Jonathan earlier that it was less than that, but I went back and counted, and but that's at least half that raised their hands just now. So there's a lot of us doing that. And I think it is true that once you start doing that, you do realize you've got what you're doing on the private side, and then what you're doing for the public, and trying to make enough money to be actually supporting our main mission, which is for the public, right? So I don't know if people have any stories about that or issues that they've found in trying to balance that. But it certainly is an issue that we've got to look at, because that's one way for us to bring in more money, right? But it's not without its hiccups.
We had an interesting one recently. There was a nonprofit we worked with, which is, in our neighborhood, the Safe Coalition. They had a 10th year anniversary gala at Gillette, not a tiny venue. And there are these giant video wall screens in the meeting room where they were there. So it was an unusual circumstance in that we were there live streaming the event with 3 cameras. So it's the control system, the entire crew, the whole bit. And they had a separate video crew feeding the video wall. So we talked to them and said, hey, we can send you our signal, it's all SDI. You can send it whatever, we can sort of share the resources. That's fine, they were great to work with. What struck me was that we're doing all this for free. They were getting paid $15,000 for the night. So, for one camera, by the way. Other questions?
Yeah, kind of to go off your point, I guess I'm curious if we're showing that we're providing such a value or a savings to the community. If you're bringing in, $500,000, but you're giving $1.5 million away in services, or you're providing that.
Yep.
I guess how do you plan to incentivize a change for that? If you're providing, I guess, more service than what the town is paying or what you're bringing in, I guess, how do you kind of flip that story to show that, hey, we're doing all this hard work, we're providing this value, but the number that you're bringing in isn't coming? It's like, how do you incentivize people to want to change that?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question. Obviously, this relates to what supplemental funding we might realize from the streaming bill and getting people to support that to perhaps phase out some of our cable revenues, with other new revenues. I think it just, my message is that it just starts with what is a fair telling of the tale. Again, you need a set of starting blocks, and what I've created here is that. Here's what we do. Here's what it's worth on the street. Here's how much money we take in. It's a demonstration that we're spending the money wisely. Every charity has this obligation to say, here's what we're providing in terms of value. Now, we're not curing cancer. We're not a food pantry. To be honest, the service that we provide, and I think in part to your point, the service that we provide is not on anybody's must-do list. I refer to it as being on the nice-to-do list, which is like way down there, you know, as opposed to suicide prevention or all these other things. So all these other charities are out there, you know, generating dollars through donations, through grants, et cetera. It's really hard to get a grant for what we do because, number one, people know that we're subsidized somehow, and number two, they feel they can put their money elsewhere that does some kind of greater good. And of course, all the charities, this is the point, the charities have to say how much of the money is actually going to the stated service or benefit that they provide. And you see them talking about, well, you know, 86% of the dollars actually do what they're supposed to do. The rest of it is, you know, G&A and overhead. And they try to get that number up as high as they can. So what we're saying is, yeah, that's great. 86% of what you do is getting to the service in question. That's wonderful. What we do comes back 2.x or 3x fold. So we have a great story to tell that way. If all we said was 86% of the dollars that we get from cable actually make it into programming and the rest of it's G&A and rent or whatever, people go, yeah, okay. But I think this is a much more powerful story. And this is, again, starting blocks. If you start the conversation here, you control the conversation. Because all they can come at you with now is, really? And questions. And you can justify it. You can get into the numbers and you can say, this is how it works. If you were to go out and do this commercially, they would charge you 3 times for the labor. They would charge you this for the cameras. They would show. This is what people in the commercial sector are charging. Do you want to pay that, or do you want to work with us for free? So you really have to kind of find a way to stand your ground with a certain amount of pride. I love the line, by the way, it's not the income, it's the outcome.
So I just wanted to quickly say I had to step out because lunch was calling. So
Yes.
I needed to make sure we got that all set. I knew you'd all appreciate that. Make sure they're making our pizzas. Anyway, we've got like another 10 or so minutes before the pizza will be back here, maybe 15. So just to give you a little heads up on that.
Liz?
First, I just want to say, Pete, everything that you're presenting is just invaluable, in my opinion. And just stemming a little bit off of the question that was asked as to what can be additionally done to take that information, or what changes can we hope to stem from what you've created. I think from my perspective, it's a combination of everything that you've presented on top of, again, how we are presenting ourselves to each of those individual organizations in the community. One thing that we've been able to accomplish in the Rentham community, for example, using a similar format, is really being able to demonstrate and articulate to these organizations, this is what our value is, this is what we can actually deliver, and then what you can do for us is you can help us. We built out sponsorship opportunities. We built out other means of revenue that we can bring in. For example, we have the youth softball and baseball league in Rentham, who actually is actually doing the due diligence to find their own sponsors. And we have a bit of a different model where we actually have monetization in place. But through their effort, we're actually now gaining sponsorship funding that they're collecting. They're donating that to us, and we're taking down paywalls. So I feel like we're able to now articulate much better and more clearly through those numbers as this is what we're bringing, this is how much it costs us, this is what we're able to do at X value, but now you can help us offset that so we can deliver more to your community. So I think we can be creative at the end of the day.
By the way, in Franklin, we have just formed or the town has just formed a communications subcommittee. So all the stakeholders that are trying to help the town get the word out are members of this committee, including us. And we've got an army of one and a guy named Steve Sherlock who covers all these news events, one of our volunteers. He's omnipresent and he does a wonderful job. We actually kitted him out with cameras, microphones, everything he needs to be a walking production company, and we corroborate everything that he's doing. So that's great. So I consider him to be like a super volunteer. You know, where's the grenade? I'll fall on it, whatever. And so when you find super volunteers, there are 2 or 3 of them that we work with, particularly Steve. They know how to use the gear. We've trained them. They're out there doing stuff for the public good, and we back them up to the hilt. And that's another great way to sort of expand what we're doing. So Steve's on the communication committee. We're on the communication committee because we have great outreach, you know, through multiple media sources. And it's just another way that the town is realizing that, you know, the value we bring means something to them, that the town council would actually get a subset of their members together to start working with us and others to help them do a better job of telling their story. So that's great.
Quick question. So obviously you're already doing stuff for the town with shared resources and all that. Have you ever taken any of these numbers and calculated what did I call it here? Calculated an equivalent percentage of the town budget and presented
I'm
to
sorry,
the town?
I'm having trouble hearing you.
My apologies. Have you ever taken any of these numbers and created like an equivalent percentage of your town budget?
Equivalent?
Percentage of town budget.
Oh. No, I haven't done that. Our town runs, I think, on something like 50 million a year. So, I mean, it's a big number, and obviously we're a tiny little piece of that. But I think what's key is that the key players, you know, the stakeholders know what we do and what it's worth, because we've been able to tell that story in the corridor, in meetings, casually, finding points to drop it in. So again, we're very much in sync with the people who matter in terms of budget. In fact, I talk to the town administrator and the school super about their budgets from time to time. We say, well, you know, we could do this over at the school in terms of the video studio over there, you know, make these changes, make more value for the students. So we kind of get into it. We get into the nitty-gritty with them as their peers. And I think that informal engagement, if you can cultivate that kind of informal engagement with stakeholders in the government building, that's a great place to be. Other questions?
When you're pitching the numbers for so proving your value, do you ever expand those numbers to like a goal and say like, but this is what we could do if you were to give us this much more?
Yeah, if we had more money to work with from the cable companies or from wherever, could we do more? Absolutely. And we can have a discussion, by the way, about the opposite of that. What are we doing to pare down our services as things get tighter and tighter? And that's a real thing. We used to do more sports with 3 cameras. We're doing a lot less of that now, down to 2. In some cases, down to 1 where warranted. So we've been dialing it back, regrettably. If we saw our budget go back up to, you know, that upward curve, you know, to where we should be in the 8s, given, you know, cost of living and all, yeah, we'd be doing more sports with more cameras, better coverage, and philosophically, we try not to say no to all the requests that come in. No for us is a word of last resort. But it does mean we need to be really careful. And yeah, we're starting to say no.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question, and then we'll have the roundtable later if anybody else has questions. Do we have any other questions?
But I wanted to, again, just give another shout out to our vendors who are here exhibiting. Jonathan from JML Lighting, we got Paul from Comrex, Katie's here from Castus, Seth from Medisond, and Gary and Danielle from Oakers. Please go around and talk with them. And then, of course, our platinum sponsors are here, Florence and Daniel from Telview. And I just wanted to, they'll be giving a presentation. Daniel will. I think we said the presentation will start at 12:20. So you have from now until then to visit the restroom, do a little visiting with our vendors who we really appreciate being here and the support that they give us both with their products and with their support for our legislation at the state level, because obviously that will enable us to have a little bit more, to be able to spend some money on some of the services and products that you offer. But feel free to do a station tour, get some lunch, use the restroom, and thank you so much to Peter for just some really great information. And again, I will send a follow-up to everyone who's here so that you'll have that link. I know Katie had sent it out, but we'll resend it to make sure that you have the link to the spreadsheets that he provided. But thank you so much, Peter.
Let's give him a
And
handshake.
again, a reminder, just a quick last reminder, again, you have questions that follow on after this. You can either contact me through info@franklin.tv or my last name, Fasciano, Fasciano, @franklin.tv. I will answer the questions, whether you put them on the MassAccess reflector or you contact me directly. I leave you with this last thought. Having started a business from scratch, built that business out of earned income, suffered the slings and arrows of all that for 13 plus years before I sold the business and moved into Avid. What I learned, and this is kind of the stuff that is not MBA material, but should be. You're in business, you wish like hell it would slow down, and you are deathly afraid it will. Why? Because you'll never work harder than for yourself. Why? Because you as the owner are the last one to get paid. Thus, every mission statement ends with, for a profit. Why? Without it, you and your mission are over. That's the commercial perspective. So, share that with you. I learned it the hard way. Happy to share it. You know, it's sometimes difficult to understand that we are blessed with the money that we do have from the cable companies. And this is a way I hope that you can help you tell your story and your benefit to all of the people who matter. Thank you all very, very much. I really enjoyed being here, and I look forward to talking to you some more. And I think that this is very much part of our next act in terms of moving the legislation ahead. It's not a case of if, it's a case of when.